Welcome back to the Gridiron Drive. I am Anthony Correnti, joined as always by my co-host Peter Traina, and the talk surrounding the 2025 NFL draft class of wide receivers has been centered on maybe it lacks some of the sizzle that previous years have had, but when you look a little bit closer, has the 2025 NFL draft class of wide receivers actually become underrated? We're going to get into all the players you need to know today, the guys that are going to go on day one, day two, and day three guys. If you love the NFL draft, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss any of the content we have set coming your way over the next few months. Pete, how you feeling? You ready to talk wide receivers?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm excited for this. Wide receivers are the moneymakers, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, there is few positions more fun to talk about than the wide receivers. So we're going to kind of split this up into two halves, talk the likely day one guys, and then get into some of the guys that we expect to go on day two and day three a little bit later in the show. So let's start with who I think is probably the belle of the ball for most people, probably near consensus wide receiver one in this draft class, and that's Tetairoa McMillan, Jr. from Arizona, a former four-star recruit, listed at 6'5", 212 pounds. He's a big fella. How do we like Tet McMillan, Pete?
We love Tet McMillan over here. Listen, you got into it right there. He's a big body perimeter target with elite size for the position. Everything you would want in a wide receiver one. He's got strong hands. He's a contested catch monster, but he could also get you yak. So, I mean, there's really not a lot to dislike about him.
Yeah, he's got an absolutely massive catch radius, dominant in contested catch situations. I know sometimes with these big body perimeter type contested catch guys, we get hung up on the separation thing. Can he consistently separate? I think he moves pretty well for a guy that's listed at 6'5", 212. And I think it's important to point out that separation comes in different ways, right? Even if you're not absolutely torching a DB and creating, a meme-worthy clip of like putting him on skates and having 5 or 6 yards of separation out there, you can still create separation at the catch point, and I think that's what Tet McMillan does really well. A prototypical kind of guy, your true boundary wide receiver that I think in this class still and in classes in the past couple of years, as we see trends of smaller wide receivers and not even like the small outlier guys, but just the slighter frames in general, the Devontae Smiths, the Garrett Wilsons of the world, the guys that aren't necessarily huge but still play inside outside. Tet has that old school huge size. You're going to see a million Mike Evans comps. It's hard to not do the Mike Evans comp. But Tetairoa McMillan's a really good player. I expect him to come off the board in the first 10 picks of the NFL draft.
Collins, Mike Evans, Nico Collins.
Yeah,
that's what he's going to get for sure. Let's move on.
All right, let's move on to another guy who's been talked about. It feels like forever, even though he's only a junior. Luther Burden III, junior wide receiver from Missouri, a former 5-star recruit, listed at 5'11", 208 pounds. Luther Burden's an exciting player. What do we need to know?
Luther Burden, he's a fantastic all-around athlete. He had a down year this season, but I don't think that was entirely on him. I think that was just, their passing offense and quarterback play. He's a big yak and screen guy. You could use him all over the field. Similar, he's not like this guy, but similar to how the 49ers use Debo. Crisp route runner. You could play him all over the field, essentially.
Yeah, he's got crazy dynamic ability in the open field and really elite ball tracking ability downfield as a deep threat. I agree that you can use him in a variety of ways. I keep coming back to Percy Harvin with that. Like, he reminds me of prime Percy Harvin for the Vikings. I do think, for fantasy purposes, you're hoping he lands in a place that maximizes that skill set and gets the unique usage out of him. But at worst, for NFL purposes, he's a very, very solid wide receiver prospect that I think can absolutely feast from the slot, but can still be a credible, really good downfield threat for you too.
Yeah, you made a good point there where the coaching it's not gonna matter totally, but if he gets a good spot, he'll shoot through the roof.
Yeah, for sure. It's the difference with him between being like I keep coming back to if a team drafts him and just goes, okay, you are our slot wide receiver, like he'll be fine. He'll be a very good slot wide receiver. But the team that really unlocks it and is like, okay, we're gonna put you in the slot, but we're also gonna move you around outside, and maybe we're gonna send you on, the jet sweeps. Maybe every once in a while we're gonna motion you out of the backfield. Get creative with him. Like you said, he doesn't have to be Debo, but you could be creative with him and where you're putting him and really scheming mismatches. Because I think when you get him in those advantageous situations, whether it's on, you can get him schemed up against a nickel corner or a linebacker or a safety or something like that, then it's kind of curtains for that defender because he's electric in the open field. All right, I guess we should talk about the guy who won the Heisman Trophy.
We almost left him out of this video, right?
Travis Hunter, the junior wide receiver / defensive back from Colorado, a former 5-star recruit, listed at 6'1", 185 pounds. Look, everybody has talked a lot about Travis Hunter at this point. I think we've said a few times on this show, we still lean a little more that we think he plays defensive back at the next level primarily. But what do we think about Travis Hunter, the wide receiver?
Yeah, it's tough to talk about Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, because we don't know yet if he's going to be drafted as a wide receiver or if he's going to be a sub-package kind of situation. But his athleticism and ball skills is absolutely undeniable. He's got a little bit of a smaller frame than you would ideally like, being under 200 pounds. But man, he just gets the ball, and he's a ball hawk, on offense and on defense, and there's a number of times that he bailed out Shedeur Sanders. So listen, man, he's got elite ball skills and pause. And, I think he's going to be a great player if he decides to be a wide receiver, but I think he's just so much better suited as a cornerback. But we had to keep him in this video.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll know for sure until draft day, unless he shockingly kind of comes out, because he's been pretty outspoken at this point, like, oh, why can't I do both? So unless he was to come out and say definitively, I'm playing one or the other, I think it'll take us waiting to see who actually takes him and that team saying what the plan is. Look, if he decided he wants to play wide receiver full time, I think he's a very, very, very good wide receiver prospect. You mentioned it. He's got elite ball skills, like just an innate ability to find the football, a natural playmaker. He's so twitched up. Like, he's just an explosive dude. So even though, maybe a little bit lighter than you'd normally want at 185 pounds, he makes up for it with the juice. Like, he is electric. And, I don't think he could play both ways full time.
No way.
But I do think if he gets drafted and a team says we're going to play as defensive back, you can still, get some real good value out of him if you want to do the sub package thing. Fantasy purposes wise, like, it's tough to really say where you can take Travis Hunter in rookie drafts until you know how much he's going to play wide receiver. But, that does present a little bit of a value opportunity in rookie drafts till we know that. And because I think if he came out and said, I'm playing wide receiver, he's one of the 3 or 4 best players in the draft.
Yeah, if you're a playoff team, from 10 to 12, and you can get him that pick, and he ends up getting, 30% or even, full-time wide receiver type snaps, you gotta pick 1, 2, 3 type guy.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the last guy we have in this tier. My guy, Emeka Egbuka, senior wide receiver from Ohio State, former 5-star recruit, listed at 6'1", 205 pounds. We love us some Emeka Egbuka. How do you feel about him?
Anthony, on this podcast, we will simply not allow prospect fatigue to affect Emeka Egbuka.
We will not.
He is polished and a nuanced route runner, a true technician, a solid run blocker, especially for his size. He doesn't have crazy high-end speed, but he is rock solid. You could play him in any personnel. He'll be a wide receiver who doesn't leave the field. He's a smart player with an extremely high floor as a high-end wide receiver too, at worst, minimum day one.
Yeah, he is just a rock solid player. I agree about the prospect fatigue thing. We do this every once in a while, especially when the guy who you think could come out as an underclassman goes back for his senior season, and then he kind of just gets buried under the other fresh batch of underclassmen. Emeka Egbuka is a good player, man. Solid inside-outside versatility. Can give you enough in yards after catch. A tough player. Really, really solid hands. Like you mentioned, a really nuanced, solid, precise route runner. He's going to make some team very happy. I think he should absolutely get taken in round 1 of the NFL draft, probably the second half of the round 1. But at that value, some teams really going to be happy if they're plugging him in as their wide receiver 2. And I really think he's a good enough player that he could be a team's wide receiver 1, should the volume present itself. But I think if one of those teams in the second half of round 1, if they're looking for a second guy to plug in, like they already have one guy there, Emeka Egbuka is a really, really solid fit for that. All right, so those are the 4 guys we expect to go on day 1. Moving on to some of the players that we think will go on day 2 and then maybe day 3 for some of them. We got another 5 guys here that we're going to get into. So let's start with one of the Texas wide receivers, Matthew Golden, junior wide receiver from Texas, former 4-star recruit, listed at 6 foot, 195 pounds. How do we feel about a Longhorns wide receiver, or one of the Longhorns wide receivers that we'll talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of a late riser if you're, not locked into college football, but he's fast, he's versatile, he's a space creator. He's got great release, he's body control and separation. I love his route pacing where he knows where he needs to get open, and I think that plays really well in the NFL.
Yeah, he's a really explosive downfield threat. You mentioned the body control. I think he has excellent body control. He definitely, came on strong down the stretch of the college football season. And some guys some people are probably just getting caught up on who Matthew Golden is now. He is the one of this group that I wonder if he sneaks his way into round 1. I think if he doesn't go round 1, he comes off the board pretty early on day 2 of the NFL draft. But he's a solid prospect. It wouldn't shock me in the least if he did end up sneaking into the back end of round 1.
I think Daniel Jeremiah has him in like his top 20, and that's huge. I mean, he's one of the best in the business, most trusted. So
yeah,
take his word as bond.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, nice segue.
Ooh.
His word is bond. Matthew Golden's teammate is bond. Let's talk the other Texas wide receiver, another junior wide receiver, Isaiah Bond, former 4-star recruit, the Alabama transfer, listed at 5'11", 180 pounds. Isaiah Bond has got the juice.
Yeah, man, he certainly has the juice. He's a frustrating evaluation because he's, like you said, he's got the juice. He's an elite runner with a track background, but he just lacks big games. And, he needs a little bit more polished. He's inconsistent, but he has all of the tools to be great. He's also not really physical, so that's another knock on him, but man, he's got all the tools.
Yeah, it's a really elite combination of speed and acceleration. Like when he really wants to throttle up, he's absolutely gone. Which helps him, he's willing to go over the middle of the field, and when he can get it there, he can really rip off some chunk plays. But to your point, like the production has been not huge. There's definitely some projection there, but the speed traits, the NFL, we see it every single year. Like every single year we do the thing where it's like, yeah, but this guy's just fast. Yeah, but the NFL cares about that. Like they covet speed wide receivers. You know what I mean? I don't think Isaiah Bond, to me, is as good of a prospect as Xavier Worthy was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's not super far off. Worthy had more production, but Isaiah Bond and that really, really high-end speed and acceleration, some team's going to fall in love with that for sure.
But yeah, it plays.
All right. Moving on to the guy who was QB1's safety valve this year, Cam Ward over in Miami. Xavier Restrepo, senior wide receiver out of Miami, former 3-star recruit, listed at 5'10", 198 pounds. I love Xavier Restrepo.
Yeah, man, he's a great player. Like you said, Cam Ward's safety blanket. He knows how to get open. Great separator. 106 first downs in the last 2 seasons. I thought that was an insane stat to kind of highlight. He doesn't have elite long speed, so he's most likely limited to the slot, but that's okay. He's strong for his size. I like him as a kind of like a Sterling Shepard type guy. but like a maxed out Sterling Shepard without injuries. High floor, limited ceiling, but a great football player.
Yeah. I think a player better for the NFL, better for your favorite team than he probably ever will be for your fantasy team. But in the right spot with the right volume could still pop there too. He is absolutely fearless going over the middle of the field. Super tough, excellent hands. He's always focused. Concentration's great. You made the point about the first downs. He just has a knack for it, man. And those guys are valuable in the NFL. If you can have a tough, reliable guy that plays from the slot, even if he's limited to the slot. You know what that reminds me a little bit of too?
Let's hear it.
Jarvis Landry.
He had a good run, man.
Yeah.
He had a great run.
Yeah. So, I mean, plug him in the right spot and you can funnel a little bit of volume through him. I think Xavier Restrepo should go on day 2. Like, I think that it wouldn't shock me at all if he goes round 2. I think if you can take him in round 3, you got yourself a nice value there, but he's a rock solid player that I think some team is going to, especially maybe if it's one of these teams that has a young quarterback, plug him right in there and get yourself a reliable guy. New kind of, safety valve, safety blanket for that young quarterback. You could do a lot worse than Xavier Restrepo. All right, let's move on to another big fella. Trey Harris, senior wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Former 2-star recruit before transferring to Ole Miss. Listed at 6'3", 210 pounds. So, we started with the big guy in Tet McMillan. And we had a couple guys that, smaller, undersized. Now we got another big guy, prototypical size. How do we like Trey Harris?
I like Trey Harris. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of mixed feelings on him. Some people are going to love him. Some people are going to not love him as much. But he missed 5 games. He still had 1,000 yards this year. He's fearless. I think he needs a little bit of work before the catch, but he's a physical outside receiver with great hands. And he's got a knack for winning in contested situations. He was kind of the go-to weapon in that Ole Miss offense. And he's got ability to separate and get downfield.
Does Ole Miss have a type at wide receiver or what?
Oh, it's beautiful.
They're like, are you big? Yeah. All right, cool.
That'll play.
Yeah. Love the size and the massive catch radius. Again, he's a great red zone threat. He can definitely make big plays. I think people will be split on him just because I think as time has gone on, like looking at the game from the outside, I think now it's easier to fall in love with the separators, right? But I don't know, man. There's still, it feels like every team is looking for a guy that's like, well, are you 6'2" plus and 210 plus pounds, and can you like really muscle somebody around on the outside? When you can find those guys, it's very, very valuable. So Trey Harris, where he gets drafted will really be interesting to me because I could see somebody falling in love in round 2. I could see him going, like late round 3 and starting to slide a little bit. It's just going to be one of those like, where's the team that falls in love with him and wants to plug him in? All right. Another guy that we'll wrap up this segment here with that's got some size to his game, Alec Iomanner, redshirt sophomore from Stanford, Canadian fella. He's a former 3-star recruit listed at 6'2", 210 pounds. This is a guy that like I feel like I like more than consensus. So I'm interested to see what you have to say about Iomanner.
I mean, I like him a lot. He's again, big physical receiver. He tore up his knee in 2022. Big, strong. I'm not going to say he has drop issues, but he did drop
some.
Some this year. Perimeter guy with a track background, so you love that as a big guy. He's cerebral. Obviously, again, he's not a big separator in his breaks, but I feel like I don't know why, and maybe this is just something I thought of. I feel like he's a Ram. Like I just feel like he's a Ram.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good size speed combo. I think he can get vertical really well. Some of the issues with drops, like you said, but also like Stanford, I wonder in a different spot, more consistent play alongside him. But The only downside is you're not really going to get much in terms of yards after catch.
Yeah.
That's just not really his game. But aside from that, I think that he's a solid contributor there. Really tough, like just a really tough physical guy on the outside. So you love that. And I definitely think he can get vertical pretty well for his size too. So I'm going to be interested to see what he tests at, like when he runs.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point in the show, you're probably wondering why we haven't talked about guys that we like, Jalen Noel, Jalen Royals, Tez Johnson, Jaden Higgins, Jack Besh. We already talked about all these guys, right? In the Senior Bowl video, which if you haven't watched it, you can click the link right up there and go check it out for yourself. So we talked Senior Bowl already after the Senior Bowl wrapped up, and we did mention all 5 of these wide receivers, but we want to hit any quick cliff notes on any of these guys?
Yeah, do you want me to just go rapid fire?
Yeah, just run right through them.
All right, we got Jalen Noel, he's smaller, quick guy, and he caught everything thrown at him during the Senior Bowl. We got Tez Johnson, explosive, great pass catcher. Only problem is he's got, outlier size. Jack Betch, probably got himself the most money during the Senior Bowl. He's not an elite separate, but he's big, strong, and he caught everything. Jaden Higgins, elite size, great footwork for a big wide receiver. Runs the whole route tree. He lacks elite top end speed. He's a 0-star screw, which I love that. Not that I love 0-star recruits, but I love that he became something. Yeah. Shows his kind of struggle. Great hands, versatile. And then why don't you cover Jalen Royals? Because I know you loved him.
I do. I love Jalen Royals. Really solid receiver that can win at all 3 levels of the field. Just comes out of a not typical football school in Utah State, coming out of the Mountain West. But he can get deep. He can do a little bit of everything for you. He really reminds me a little bit of Brandon Ayuk. I love the kind of like violence and punch behind his hands. He's a really, really intriguing player. I think he's really going to be one of my 5 favorite wide receivers in this draft class, and one of the more interesting ones to see, like, where is he actually going to end up getting selected? So yeah, those 5 guys we talked about a little bit further in detail on the Senior Bowl show. Like I said, you can click the link or go to the rest of the videos on the channel and check out that video for yourself if you haven't already. All right, that's the breakdown of the 2025 wide receiver class. We covered Senior Bowl standouts, both in this video and the last video. Day 2 and 3 guys and the elite first round talents. But now it is your turn. Who's your wide receiver 1 in this class? Are we underrating someone? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more NFL draft content. We want to hear who your favorite wide receiver in this draft class is. So make sure you leave it in the comments down below, and we will be back next week.
Keep the drive alive. Don't forget to like and subscribe.